Yeah, it sadly looks like today's going to be their day of obituaries. I don't know if I did want to inform him, but I think I'm going to do one later as well. Hulk Hogan. Let's talk about Hulk Hogan. So, I was a wrestling fan my whole life. And what happened when I was about 11, 12 years old is Shane and Vince McMahon moved in to our Greenwich neighborhood. They were having their house built nearby. They were from Cape Cod, where the father started that business, and Vince took over. And my life changed. It on Halloween. All the wrestlers would come over to their house and greet people. But it didn't change how much of a wrestling fan I was. Before or after. Like I was always a wrestling fan, and ironically back then, and I've talked about this with boxing. You couldn't see that much of it on television, so you had to get a lot of it through the magazines. And the funny part is Vince had a very big federation for a very long time, even on the regional circuit. But the other competitors were able to live through magazines, and they would berate Vince and whatnot, and they would talk about how controversial he was without specifying what that controversy was, and things like that. And so you could literally, I guess what I'm saying is that was my first experience with propaganda. And I was at WrestleMania 1 in Madison Square Garden, right? And it was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper in the main event. And Liberace played the piano and everything else. And that was Vince's big gamble on taking off. And it worked like a charm, right? Because after that, people were tuning into WrestleManias like crazy. I mean, I think that's where pay-per-view really started getting crazy. And in a lot of ways, people think of wrestling as a fake sport. And yeah, okay, so it's acting. I get that. But like what first drove pay-per-view numbers was wrestling. It wasn't boxing, right? Like the wrestling had way bigger pay-per-view numbers. And also I think, as much as you try to take the fake element, if you will, out of combat sports, you leave it in, right? Like, why did Nick Diaz get a shot against Carlos Kana, a shot against St. Pierre, then a shot against Anderson Silva? It's because people loved his personality, right? Like, he wasn't even that exciting a fighter, but he was just, his personality was larger than life. It was like these pro wrestling guys. And that's the way it was with Hulk Hogan, when they put him over. And I remember there was talk about keeping Bob Backlund in because he was a real wrestler, and none of that stuff really mattered. And Vince Jr. saw that, and Senior didn't. But it changed the game for life. Hulk Hogan was the catalyst for that. Like he's who he used, and why did he use Hulk Hogan? And a lot of people forget this. Hulk Hogan got himself in Rocky 3, and Vince saw like, okay, the world knows Hulk Hogan now because we lived through Rocky movies, and then they brought him on as their champion, and the rest was history. But yeah, I mean, we can't ever separate entertainment from combat sports, and nor should we. By the way, when we try to do that, it doesn't work. That's that Bellator tournament style where somebody we don't know wins and it gets us upset. No, we want to know the personalities. We want to know the people, and we loved Hulkamania and Hulk Hogan saying our prayers and taking our vitamins and all of that, man. It was a generational thing, and I will never forget Hulk Hogan and how much he brought to combat sports in general. Everybody read my book, Warrior of the Light.